everyone, and welcome back. I'm Terry Gross, and today I'm here with the author of the best-selling sci-fi novel, The Martian, Andy Weir. Hello, Andy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing good as well, thank you. So, I'm going to go ahead and dive into our first question, which is about your past. I understand that you were hired at a natural laboratory when you were only 15. Can you tell me about what you did there?
Well, I was hired as a programmer for a national laboratory called Sandia. I got a head start because my father was an accelerator physicist, and I've always been interested in science. I went to college at AC San Diego after that, but never graduated, and worked at more laboratories after that. But Sandia was definitely the most interesting because I was so young.
Yes, that had to have been an amazing experience being there at such a young age. Did you face any challenges while you were there? I mean, you couldn't possibly have been as advanced as the other scientists.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't as advanced, but people there knew I was younger, and they made me feel welcome. In the times where I felt like an outsider, I was still having a good time because I was really passionate about science.
So you started writing in your early 20s. Did you always want to be a science fiction writer, or did you write about other things first?
Not all of my earlier pieces were science fiction, and the ones that weren't the best pieces, so I do kind of wish that I stuck to that genre. But I've always been a science nerd, and one of the things I do in my free time is imagine Mars missions in my head. That's where I got the idea to write The Martian. Writing it, though, was a very long process. The book even became a bestseller before I actually published the final copy.
Wow, that's really interesting. How were you able to gain a fan base before even making the final adjustments?
Thanks to my previous works, I had a website where I published my pieces. I had a pretty small following, but they were really good people to have as followers because they would always read my work and give me feedback, both positive and negative. I would post one chapter at a time and would edit the story as I got more feedback. Eventually, people asked me to put the book on Amazon, so I did, and that's when it really got its popularity. Publishers started calling me, studios were bidding on film rights, and it got crazier but amazing from there.
Wow, that's definitely an amazing way to get your book out there. You were able to gain exposure for free, and you didn't even have to call publishers, begging them to give your book a shot. But even though you had this huge success story, did you have any doubts along the way?
Oh yes, definitely. One of the things I was worried about was being scientifically accurate, which I was for the most part. But so many different scientists and astronauts were huge fans of the book and commended me for my accuracy. They did say there were some parts that were a little off, but they corrected me, and I applied those corrections in my final copy. But the thing I was most worried about was if the storyline I came up with would be interesting for other people. I wanted to keep it as accurate as possible, but I thought maybe I would have to have Mark get hit by a meteor at some point to keep the audience entertained. But as I went on, the book started to write itself. I didn't need to try hard to make an interesting plot because the science did it for me. I even got to the point where I surprised myself with all the plot twists.
That's certainly very interesting, as it goes to show that things that are educational can be very interesting, not just the crazy, unrealistic, end-of-world plots. Was this something that you wanted to show in this book?
Well, I always like to spread my love for science onto my friends, but going into writing this book, I didn't think I would be successful with just the realistic stuff. And I knew I would have to throw some crazy plot twists in. But once I got into it, the book started writing itself, and my main goal became to keep it realistic. I'm really proud of how it turned out because I get fan mail that starts with, "I usually don't read science fiction, but..." That's my favorite type of fan mail because I get to see the impact I left on people.
Now, one of the main ways you kept readers interested was the way that you characterized the main character, Mark Watney. What did you see him like before you started writing this novel?
Well, obviously I knew he had to be smart. He's an astronaut first off, and also if you're stranded on Mars, you need to have wits in order to survive the mission. But I also needed to make him fail a few times to make the plot keep you on your toes. I had to make some tweaks to make that side of him realistic, which really helped the story. I mean, it wouldn't have been as interesting if Captain Lewis, who is a perfect genius, was the one who was stranded.
I definitely agree with that. A little more about Mark's character. How did you use his character development to further the plot of the story?
Mark's a funny guy. I think that's what really kept people attached to the story and how they fell in love with his character. The moment the story starts, he's making jokes about a certain doom and uses his sarcasm to hide his fear that he's going to die. But as the story moves along, he becomes more and more hopeful that he'll get out. And as you can tell by the jokes he makes, he really thinks there's a chance he will make it, but he doesn't want to believe it in case he doesn't. I think that the way he uses his humor really shows that. I also use his humor to keep folks interested, like how some sologs will be one-sentence comments that have nothing to do with space, or how he goes on about Lewis's 70s records. Those were used to make him a more lovable guy and keep the story more lighthearted.
Mark seems like such an interesting and vibrant character. Are there any similarities between you and the character you created?
It wasn't my original intention to make Mark similar to myself, but as the story develops, I found myself channeling parts of my personality to create his character. A lot of the jokes in the story were some that I found funny or would even tell, and obviously we both have a love for space and science.
One last question. So they made a movie out of your novel. Were you pleased with how they portrayed the story?
I think they did a really good job, both the actors and the producers. But I do wish they would have included small details that really shaped Mark's character, like the log about Aquaman. I thought that really portrayed his personality.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.